So let's get started here. We have a slide here. I'm going to talk about some background information, and then we're going to talk about some very specific risks and opportunities for the future. There are two distinct forces at play in healthcare in emerging markets. One is demographics, and the other are the geopolitical influences, well beyond tomorrow. Now, in the area of demographics, we can go to the next slide. In the area of demographics, I know everyone here is familiar with the demographic changes that are taking place around the world. In fact, that's why we're all here. That's why you're in business, because of the dramatic demographic changes that are happening in emerging markets and now in frontier markets. But what we're going to talk about very briefly is the explosive population growth, and in particular, the explosive population growth of the middle class. 60% of the Arab population today is under the age of 20. It is estimated that the world population will increase by 50% to almost 10 billion people by 2050. That's less than 40 years from now. 10 years ago, China and India had 13% of the world's middle class. And there is an old phrase that says India's middle class is in fact larger than the entire United States. Well, in 20 years, China and India will have 44% of the world's middle class. That's triple from what they have today. And it is this sheer size and pace of growth of the middle class in emerging markets and elsewhere that will have a profound impact on healthcare resources. And this is what we're going to explain. I'm going to use food as one example of what we see happening because of this explosive growth. The MENA region, that is, as you know, the Middle East and North Africa, today they are the world's largest cereal importer. Food prices in Egypt last month alone increased 20.7% in 1 month. In 2014, Brazil, India, and China will spend approximately $2 trillion US on food. That will be double what they spent in 2009. Today, export bans on rice and grain are a couple of years old, and they're not being rescinded. Food riots are rarely mentioned in the international press any longer. Yet it was only last year, at the end of 2010, did we see people riot and vandalize a hospital in protest for lack of access to medical care. And it is that lack of access to medical care, to hospital care, to medical technology that is going to begin to put pressure on healthcare resources. The exponential growth of the world's middle class already is pushing technology at a pace that we just can't keep up with. Everybody remembers all the way back in 2001 when Apple introduced the iPod, the musical device. They sold 3 million units in 3.5 years. About 2.5 years ago, they introduced the iPhone. They again sold 3 million units, but they did it in 80 days. The demand for access to the latest medical advancements will begin to push against other demand forces, including military and consumer goods. In November of last year, GE Medical announced that they now see China as a viable healthcare market. Now, I'm not sure why it took them till November of 2010 to see China as a viable healthcare market, but these are smart people, and I know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. Well, just 3 weeks ago, BASF, the German conglomerate, announced that they were going to enter 2 totally new sectors, food and healthcare. While demographics are certainly a driving change in the future, we actually think geopolitics are going to play a greater role in the long term. And what we have in mind when we talk about geopolitical risk is the need for developers and investors to plan for the types of risks that will become commonplace in the future. For instance, might hospitals be forced to pay carbon credits if they have an excess number of patients flying in for medical care? And if that were to take place, would that instill a regional advantage, say, to Jordan over India? What is behind Russian leaders saying that they want to transfer pharmaceutical technology to the state, like they did just a few months ago? Is the South-South trade model a moneymaker for private healthcare? We see India and Latin America in the pharmaceutical sector having a very strong and rapidly growing relationship. And they also have very similar demographics. How do the demographics of a young country benefit the old age pension countries like Germany or the United States? And might the US debt load have an impact on healthcare in Eastern Europe? These questions are not really academic by themselves, because these are the challenges that investors and developers are going to have to deal with on a regular basis as they begin to cross borders. Healthcare has historically been a sector that stays within confines, geographic borders. It stays within the cultural and social context that it works in. But that's no longer the case today, and it's going to accelerate much, much faster in the future. For investors and developers, the complex human-intensive nature of healthcare, combined with geopolitical realities, requires a skill set that's not readily available in other sectors. Well, we can go on about demographics and geopolitics for quite a while, but we're going to move into some specifics here.